Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dr. Clem. I'm with IFAS Alachua County, and I'm the Environmental and Community Horticulture Agent as well as the Master Gardener Volunteer Coordinator. And I want to thank you all for joining us today for this program, Planning a Community Garden. This is a follow-up program to last month's Community Garden program where one of the Master Gardener volunteers talked a lot about her community and the garden that she's created on the north side of town called the Dreamer's Garden. But today, what we really want to do is not just focus on a specific garden, but to really focus on, how do we start with the idea of a community garden and what are some of the things that we need to consider to make sure that our community garden is successful. So, like I mentioned, a lot of the things we're going to talk about today are going to be from that like 30,000 foot view, because very specific practices or very specific things that we want to achieve in our community gardens is unbelievably diverse. So it's going to be very hard to really jump into all of them. But nonetheless, you can always reach out to me, or at the point when we have discussions, you can ask more specific questions to help answer any of those questions that you have in the context of what we're talking about with these community gardens. So anyways, to get us moving on, I want to thank again y'all for coming, but I want you all to first answer this question. So what interests you in community gardens? So we're talking about community gardens today, but why are they interesting to you? Take a minute, think about it, and put it in the chat box. And you should be able to find the chat box. I think it's at the bottom of your screen, or it's at the top of your screen. You can pull it out, or I think also Alt-H will make a pop-up window for it. But what interests you in community gardens? This isn't a simple one-word answer, really. So we'll take a minute to allow people to respond. All right. See, just by looking at his comments in the chat box, I don't think we need to move forward for the day. There's a very consistent theme that I see here, and that's very good, because that at the cornerstone of community gardens, which y'all are mentioning, is that what I see or what I'm looking at is bringing people together for a shared goal of healthy food, being able to meet with neighbors and work towards a goal, meeting people and building friendship. One person specifically, they're a director of a soup kitchen, and we're looking to start our own community garden. That's awesome. There are some community gardens that we do have that like we send, like at least with the Master Gardener Volunteer Program, we send a lot of our food into the food banks that we produce. And there's also a lot of other food banks that are like the soup kitchen that are starting their own community gardens to help feed or bring food into that program. So that's awesome. Community connection to source rather than being disconnected. Yeah, by only knowing food is what lies in a grocery. Yeah, so developing a deeper understanding of our food and where it comes from. Not necessarily just with as an adults, but youth, and understanding that cycle, and having a true respect of where our food is, and especially for growing ourselves, gives you a much deeper appreciation to what you're growing. Create an intentional community gardens and to be part of it. Yes, absolutely. Provide a source of fresh, locally grown produce for community members, grown by the community, for the community, by the community. I like that. Meeting others that have the same passion for gardening. Yeah. Food security. Absolutely. Yeah, community butterfly gardens. So I think that's an interesting thing, and I'll talk about that here in a few minutes, is what's the purpose of our community garden? It doesn't necessarily just have to be vegetable gardening, but it could be something like a pollinator or butterfly gardening. Great. Yeah, so interest around structuring and developing the garden, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. Yeah. Yeah, attract volunteers to make it a true community. That, I think one of the things that I really like to see from those responses is almost all of them really come back to community. And I say this throughout the program. I say community first, garden is second. Because one of the most important things about having a successful community garden really comes back into that community and having that community buy-in and that relationship, that social interaction or social capital that's associated with having a successful garden. And if you want to have a successful garden, you need to have that strong social interaction and to develop community around or within that community garden. So that's awesome that you all are thinking about that already. So let's go ahead and jump forward. So at, when we go through this program, I want to be able to answer these. I want you to be able to answer these 3 essential questions by the time we finish. Or at least it gets you to the point where you can think about these, but also you can begin to ask more questions that can help you learn more about the topic specifically. But those 3 essential questions that I want us to be able to address throughout this program today is, what are the essential elements to start a successful community garden? What creates a community garden, and what resources are available to start or run a community garden? So I must admit, this is part of Alachua County Extension. So when we talk about all these resources, they're going to be part of our local resources here in Alachua County. But if you are outside of Alachua County, always reach out to your local county extension office to see what resources are available to you, to learn about starting and running your own community garden, or for some of the just to see what's there to help out. So, but anyways, let's go ahead and get forward. So let's talk about the essential elements. When putting this program together, I was like, how do I distill the essential elements into like little nuggets of chunks of information? And what I created, are kind of what I thought about, is the purpose, the people, location, and of course, equipment. So we'll talk about each one of these, but I really wasn't sure. You can see my Zoom background is also the image on this slide. But I was trying to think, as which came first, the chicken or the egg, the purpose, the people, or location. And I couldn't really figure out that. I don't think that you can have one without the other. It is more of, when you're starting to plan a community garden, you need to think about that purpose, people, and location. And then those can help start to influence that equipment, of course. But you need to know those essential elements, all kind of like looking at them all at the same time, not necessarily in a specific step-by-step process. So just as a simple notes as we go forward into this. But we'll talk a little bit about the purpose, people, location, and equipment, to those essential elements first. So the purpose. What is the purpose of your community garden? So if you're thinking about a community garden, some of you have already mentioned it a little bit in your first response, but what what is the goal? What are you wanting to do with your community garden? Um, so the additional question is, like, what need to be accomplished to achieve that purpose? So the purpose of your community garden, that's kind of like what I equate to. It's almost like a mission statement, I would guess. So a mission statement of a business. What are you wanting to do? What's the purpose? Why do you exist as a garden? So if some of you start to think about that, what is the purpose of your community garden? Go ahead and put that in the chat box, just as a good example. What's something that you've been thinking about as that purpose? And we'll take a second to let people respond to it. Provide fresh food to those who otherwise don't have access to it. That's wonderful. Teaching others to grow their food. This is great. Yeah, it's communicating with my synagogue members. Yeah, wonderful. So we can see that the purpose, yeah, using a community garden as a teaching area or a teaching tool. So the purpose can really change from person to person, because you're thinking about, why does this garden exist? What's the purpose of this garden? And that's why we're looking at it from this 30,000 foot view, is because the slight variations in purpose can lead to a whole new way in how we're managing and planning and using that garden. Another one just came in, is getting a few people together to enjoy creating something good. I love that. It's basic, it's simple, it's effective. But when we think about the purpose, we need to also think, okay, what do we need to accomplish in order to achieve that purpose? So what we're kind of creating is almost like a business plan to a certain extent for your community garden, because what this is going to do is it's going to help direct the community garden, its programs and its activities. So rather than being like, hey, I've seen some community gardens that are like all over the place, this thing, this thing, that thing, this thing, this thing, that thing, and they're all disconnected. So having that purpose helps streamline you, point the garden into a certain direction, and then those needs to accomplish help you achieve that purpose. So what I kind of think about is one way to kind of determine what do we need to accomplish in order to achieve this purpose. We have these things that we call SMART goals, or we can call them goal-oriented community gardens. So these SMART goals are kind of like little benchmarks that we can create, that we know that if we are achieving these goals, we're achieving our purpose. So, and if we're not achieving these goals, are we effective at meeting our purpose of our garden? And what do we need to do to change how we're managing our garden, or planning or creating a garden, to make sure that we're meeting the purpose? So essentially, we're creating an evaluation tool. I know it's like, might sound kind of bland, but this is the world of extension. This is what I do every day. But what we do is we create SMART goals. SMART goals help us achieve, or goals can help us achieve those purpose. And SMART goals, I'm going to send you all actually some good information on how to create SMART goals. But what the SMART goals are, they're specific. They are like specific action items or things to achieve. They're measurable, so if you're good or bad, or successful or not successful. They're attainable, so there's something you can actually do. They're reasonable, so reasonable to be done with the resources available, and they're timely. So it's something that that's time bound. Is it something quarterly, monthly, seasonally? That's really up to you. So you create these SMART goals when you're planning your garden to help make sure that when you meet these goals, you're achieving the purpose of your garden. And the thing is, these aren't always set in stone. You can achieve one SMART goal and be like, cool, that worked great. Did it work well for us? Do we need to update these? Do we need to change them? And I do actually have a couple examples that I want to show of this. So, the purpose. It's kind of like that mission statement. What is the reason this garden exists? And what are those goals that we need to achieve to make sure we're meeting our garden's purpose? So here's a couple examples that I kind of put together. So one garden, the purpose of the garden, this hypothetical garden, is to create a food-producing garden that educates, creates community, and provides essential sustenance. You could probably use a different word for sustenance, but just when I was writing it, that was the only thing I could think of, but it still makes the same point. But that's the purpose of the garden. And here are 3 quick SMART goals that I put together. I say, okay, if I'm achieving these goals, I'm achieving the purpose of my garden. So the first one is community participation increases by 10% annually. So that's just saying that each year we're seeing the community, that number increase by 10% each year. And hey, if you go a year and you only have 5% or 2% increase, or you don't grow at all, that's totally fine. It's okay if you miss your goals, but it's still giving you a good benchmark that you can shoot for. The second goal that I have is community garden participants report increased gardening skills quarterly. So what we're saying is, yeah, we're having all these participants coming in, but we want them to learn something. We want them to be able to take something away from this community garden that they can use outside of here, that maybe they use to teach others, or maybe that they use as a tool to bring others into this community garden. So you could say quarterly, it could be something self-reported, but those participants are learning something new. Whether it be something as simple as, I learned how to sow a seed today. I learned how to deadhead annuals or perennials. You know, it could be something super simple, but you're seeing those participants report increased garden skills. So you're seeing that the education component of your community garden is being successful. The third goal that I put together for this one is food production will increase 5% each year. So that's kind of a hard one, I think, to kind of get, but it is definitely possible. Because if we think about, you know, adhering to best management practices and the new science and recommendations that we give with a lot of our gardens, we know that we can increase production on a much smaller square footage. And then also just shows that the garden is being more productive. Maybe the garden has grown some. We're able to add more beds. People's skills increase, so they're able to produce more. Or, you know, one person was able to spend more time in the garden that year, so it allowed you to keep one bed active a little bit longer than you did the previous years. So that's really looking at that food production. So you can see that each one of these goals, goal one really comes down to participation. How's the community engaging itself? They report increased gardening skills quarterly. And the third one comes back to just that food production and the sustenance. So you can kind of see that each goal directly relates to the purpose of the garden. So, you know, really you create these goals that you think are most appropriate for you. I mean, I could have included a goal in here that said the volunteerism, something related to like gardening retention or volunteerism or satisfaction with volunteers within the garden, to make sure it's something that people really want to be part of or they're feeling that satisfaction with. So that's another type of goal I could have included in this. So you can create these goals and they help create a targeted effort to make sure that as you're managing this garden, that you're making sure you achieve that purpose of the garden. The second example that I do have, this comes back to conveniently pollinators and butterflies. So the purpose that I created for this example is, you know, I say I'm living within my HOA or my community, and I'm interested in getting people plugged into a community garden. Excuse me, you may hear a dog. I'm living at my parents' house right now, and he's a little loud some days. So sorry if you hear him barking in the background. But anyways, the purpose of this specific garden is to create a community butterfly garden that helps educate community members and provides essential elements for Alachua County's pollinators. So I then again created 3 goals. You can have 2 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals. I want to do too many because then you're going to find that it ends up being hard to kind of juggle everything. So the first goal, community members' knowledge about butterflies or pollinators increase after visiting the garden. So that's just really looking at people come to the garden. Are they learning something? Is that knowledge increasing as they interact with the garden? The second goal is community members begin planting butterfly gardens as a result of visiting or participating in the community butterfly garden. So what we're looking at, the first goal is really that knowledge gain. It's looking at that short-term change, like that single interaction, but then we're really interested in like, how do you change behavior? And that goal 2 becomes that behavior that we're looking at. So I learned something, and new skills. I've learned the importance of pollinators. So I might have a belief change or something like that, an attitude change, where all of a sudden I'm like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to plant my own pollinator garden. And that is a result of that community garden. And then the third one is annually plant material will increase plant material will increase a more diverse population of pollinator species. So that's just looking at, as we have this diverse population of plant material, we're going to see an increased diversity of the pollinators and butterflies that visit our garden. So you can kind of see that these three goals go towards that targeting and achieving that purpose of that butterfly garden. So I think this is kind of important. So I want you all to take a minute, and I want you to potentially or write down what would be a possible objective or goal that you want to create that you could use to help achieve your garden's purpose. Go ahead and take a second and think about it. I'll go back to that SMART goal kind of so you can see what it means. And just try to give me a good example. And, I'm not looking for a SMART goals, but just seeing that you're thinking about what could be goals that you could strive for when planning your community garden. And I also have to get a cat out of the room. All right. Let's see. Does anybody have any examples? That's a great one. Have at least one new community member join each session. That's great. That is a wonderful goal. That is a wonderful goal. And what you can do is, as you see that, say, you're accomplishing that each session, you're like, oh, I'm really achieving this goal. Can you bump it up that goal a little bit more? Can you make it, it's like, that's very attainable for you. What's that next benchmark up that you can shoot for? But that's a wonderful SMART goal or objective to try. Yeah. Yeah, encourage first-time gardeners to participate. And, having those, encouraging them and seeing them come to that program would be a great way to kind of determine the success of kind of creating that community engagement. So yeah, so these SMART goals, I'll resource on how to put them together, but I just love using this as a tactic, because if you want to have a successful community garden, you need to make sure you have a very targeted approach in how you're making sure you achieve these purposes. And if you're maintaining the garden yourself or leading it yourself or with a group, this is a really good way to kind of help organize yourself a little bit too. I use SMART goals all the time because that helps me organize myself as I do planning. But anyways, let's go ahead and keep going. So that's the purpose. So let's go ahead and let's talk about people. So what's a community garden without people? Who needs to be involved? Go ahead and put in your chat box, like, who do you want involved? Who's involved already? Who would you like to participate? It can be friends, family, neighbor. Give me some examples of some of the things that you're thinking about for a community garden, or those that are involved in a community garden that you work with. And put that in the chat box for me. Yeah, everyone, kids and their parents working together. Yeah. Everyone has interests, donors, absolutely. Yeah, currently is mostly church members involved, but we like to have more people from the surrounding neighborhood involved. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So there's a lot of great ways or people like who needs to be involved, how do you get involved or people involved with the garden? You need to think about who are those community leaders. And I've already seen in the chat box a couple of times one person mentioned a synagogue and the other person mentioned that they're part of a church group. Those are great ways to kind of, faith-based organizations are great ways if you're looking at kind of creating a community garden, is finding, they have a good network already set up, that you can reach out to, how to get access to some materials, supplies, etc. But also has a pool of people that you can probably pull from a little bit easier, to a certain extent. But looking for those community leaders is going to be really successful, and it could be like, how can you get them involved and plugged in? Who are those local organizations, like a faith-based organization, local nonprofits? It could be youth development, it could be Master Gardener volunteer. um, but most importantly, it's the community members. The community members are the ones that need to come together. Yeah, city leaders are wonderful. If you can get city leaders involved with a community garden, that really helps promote that garden, help allow them to get their foot in the door. Even if they come out and just volunteer, it really shows a lot for a community if you have those city leaders participating. Because even if you see them out there, or someone in the community neighborhood sees one of our city leaders out, just tilling the soil, doing something in the community, that has a huge impact. Yeah, any kid who needs community service hours. So high schoolers, it could be Boy Scouts because they have their service hour requirements, 4-H youth. So there's a lot of different ways you can get them plugged in, but community members are going to be your most valuable asset. But it's important to create a leadership group. Create a leadership group. Don't let everything fall on your shoulders. That's going to be unfair for you, unfair to the garden, and eventually it could end up leading to the garden's demise, because if you get burnt out, what happens then? Um, so create a leadership group. Community gardens can be tough to manage if relying on one person. A leadership groups help makes decisions, communicate to the community, and help get local support. And, and that's why I kind of put the Three Musketeers on here, because I was just thinking, it's just like in order to be successful, you have to have a team. And that team, the community garden, may not have sustainability built around it. Because one of the biggest issues that we have seen in some of the community gardens around Alachua County is it's a really strong leadership that starts out, but all of a sudden that single person backs away from the program because life happens. Then all of a sudden the leadership is gone, and then all of a sudden no one comes to the garden anymore, and it kind of just fizzles out. And we don't want that to happen. So having a leadership group can really help push and move that garden forward in perpetuity in its success. So thinking about that location. So we talked about the purpose, the people, and now location. Where is your community garden going to be? So there's a couple things that are going to be very important to consider. Is, does your purpose match the environmental conditions that you want it to be? So like, say you wanted to do a community garden that's based off of like shade planting, you can't put that garden in full sun. So do those environmental conditions match the garden purpose? Like sun for vegetable gardens, shade for shade community gardens. You can have partial shade, the full sun for some pollinator gardens. So, just make sure that that location that you're using matches the purpose and helps work towards that purpose of the garden. Next is water availability. This can commonly become an issue with gardens, is knowing what is the available water source, where's it coming for, and who's paying. So is it if it's part of a church, do they have are they paying that water bill? If it's on a municipal source, if you have a well, okay, cool, no problem. But if you're in the city of Gainesville, you can't really have any wells anymore. So you're hooking up to the municipal water sources, or the utility. So you have to know who's paying and who's responsible. So knowing where that water is going to be really, really important. And even if it's not just for like irrigation, but making sure that you can easily hook up a hose to a hose bib or a spigot, right next to the garden. It allows someone to just come in and water plants if need be. Um, it's super, super helpful. I've seen one garden where the spigot was like 100 feet away from the garden. And like anytime someone had the water, they'd have to hook up a huge long hose. They'd have to unroll it, turn the water on. They'd have to water everything, and then they have to roll it all back up. And that just becomes a huge hassle, and it creates a barrier. And that barrier is just, it's wildly inconvenient. And if something's wildly inconvenient, and that barrier is created, then it's going to be hard to convince people to do it. So eliminate those barriers. But thinking about that water is going to be so, so, so important. Um, and in addition to barriers, think about accessibility. Accessibility to where your community garden is going to really dictate barrier control. Can people easily get into it? Who's managing it? What can they do? And also, not only just getting access to it, but are some gardens, are they ADA accessible? All needs. How can people engage and act or participate in the community garden? So think about accessibility, because you could theoretically have a community garden. I've seen this before, a community garden that's like your front yard, your house, where it's just like you and your neighbors. So it's like, hey, come over to my house and you can garden in my backyard, my front yard. I'll allow you to come in, or it's like city lots. There are some vacant city lots that City of Gainesville will actually say, hey, we can turn this into a community garden. And that has great access because then people can come in and go as need if they want to manage their plots. Um, Green spaces in different communities. So there's a lot of communities like HOAs, condominium associations, or just neighborhoods that have open green space. And that open green space could easily be adapted to have gardens in them. Like one I know is like the Gainesville Co-housing. That's an outlier. The Gainesville Co-housing, they have a bunch of community gardens there. But like the town of Tioga has green spaces that has raised beds gardens in them. And the name of the condominium association is skipping my mind all of a sudden, but it's downtown and they have a garden that's part of the condominium. Um, so really, if you have spaces within your community and you have the ability to talk to the community leadership or managers and kind of say, hey, can we turn this unused green space into a community garden? That's a really great way to kind of bring that into the community more. But maybe open space at an existing facility. So that's a great opportunity to create partnerships. Those are those additional people, those businesses, local affiliates that you can work with. So that could be like schools, faith-based organizations, community facilities, pretty much anywhere that's like, hey, I want to be able to create a community garden and we would like to see if you'd be interested in partnering with us, because it could help achieve their goals as well and their purpose. And the next thing you know, you have a great partnership that you're able to start working on and developing. So really think about accessibility. How will people get to it? How accessible is that garden? Next is equipment. It's really think about, you know, that objective based equipment. What do you need to make sure that you can accomplish the needs of that community or of that community garden? Of course, you're going to need like basic gardening supplies. It's always nice to have like a wheelbarrow, trowels, pruners, rakes, you name it. But equipment and supplies can really depend on management, and that management is who's managing it, how often are they using it, what's the cost of that equipment. And then some of the gray areas that we sometimes run into is ownership and access and security. So who owns the equipment? Is it the community garden? Is it the community garden leaders? Is it individuals? And then how do you get access to it? Some of the community gardens, we have lockers where where they actually lock things up, and the community leaders or like the garden leaders are the only ones that can open those boxes to allow for people to come in and use that equipment. So it really, these are some of the things that you need to think about and what can you manage successfully. um, yeah. um, so a common practice asking members of that garden just to bring your own tools and equipment. A lot of our Master Gardener volunteers and a lot of their they are managed, they just bring their own tools and equipment to help do a lot of the management. But we also have like school gardens, they're going to have their own tools and equipment on site. Some of our community and demonstration gardens around Alachua County, they have storage on site for them, like the Cone Park Library. They have a big storage locker, and that gets unlocked as those programs are ran out there with the City of Gainesville. And so it really depends, and that's ultimately a decision for that community garden leadership. Um, and sometimes this has created an issue where you got to think about that transparency is, you know, we have this equipment for the garden. How do people have access to it? Now, even though you might be community garden leadership, I wouldn't recommend taking that equipment home and using it on your own garden, even though you may have permission to, or you may be allowed to. So it's just kind of comes a gray area. But when you're thinking about like, is really think about that management, who's managing it, how often, how much does it cost, because sometimes you want to make sure you can afford what you're purchasing, but if you have to use it all the time, you don't always want to get like the cheapest things, because if they break a lot, then you're going to have to replace them a lot, and that adds up very quickly. And then that own access and security, these are things that you just need to think about. And if you're starting your community garden, always feel free to reach out to us if you're like, this is what we're doing, materials and supplies that we're thinking about, but what else do we need? You can reach out to us at the county extension office, and we will gladly help you kind of create that list of other tools and equipment that you might need for your community garden. But also, think about the capabilities, what can be done successfully with the volunteers or participants of the community garden. Gardens are dependent on proper design and plant selection, of course. So making sure that the maintenance is considered when you're doing that planning. I've seen a lot of times where people start out big, huge, but they only have a very small handful of volunteers. And next thing you know it, they're run ragged because there's so much maintenance demand that they can't keep up with it. So really think about, does your maintenance needs, or do your supplies or resources meet your maintenance needs? Can you meet those demands? And also consider landscapes continually change. How do they change over time? What are those maintenance needs that change throughout the time? And really making sure that you're planning and anticipating those changes as your garden moves forward. So we kind of hinted on this already a lot. So we talked about the essential elements, but what ultimately creates a community garden? Now I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over waiting for you all to put in the questions or answers, because I think you already have this figured out. It's the people. The people create the community garden. The community first, the garden is second. I was talking to a Master Gardener volunteer coordinator from Alachua County who's since retired a few years ago. And I talked to him and I said, what is your recommendation for our volunteers, for the Master Gardener volunteers? Is, what is it that really drives them to stay engaged with the program, to want to come back and volunteer and keep volunteering? And he goes, Taylor, just give them something they care about. He said it in a little bit more colorful language than I just did, but he said, give them something they care about. And that's really what it comes down to, is when we think about why do volunteers volunteer in the first place, that is going to be a key important nugget of information that we hold on to as our leadership groups for planning our community gardens, to make sure our community garden has longevity with it, is really thinking about how do we create a community garden where volunteers want to be there? How do we draw them there? And that is really building community around the garden, making it a social experience. Because I always like to say, like, give those people a reason to attend. A lot of failures have occurred in community gardens because they followed the field of dream mentality. If you build it, they will come. Sorry, Kevin Costner, it doesn't work that way with community gardens. What happens is you need to build a community around it. You need to make people say, I want to participate in that. Just saying, come here and garden and learn how to garden, that's not necessarily going to do it, because people are going to say like, yeah, but I can do that at my own home, you know? So like, what brings them there? Why do they want to come there? And it's really a really social thing. So like, you all volunteer. Why do you volunteer? What's the purpose and reason that you volunteer? Go ahead and take just 2 seconds to, sorry, 2 seconds isn't long enough, but take a minute and just write a couple, like statement in a chat box. Why do you volunteer? To feel connected. Wonderful. That's a great one. To feel worthy. Yeah. Self-worth. Learn from others. To be of service. So, it's really neat as we're looking at like, why do you volunteer? Yeah, give back, to educate and meet people at a museum. Wonderful. Yeah, so like, why do we volunteer? None of you said to learn how to garden. I mean, you definitely learned when you go to the garden, but you're learning from others. You're engaging with others. And that's super, I mean, that's consistent across the board with all types of volunteerism. If we say there's been a lot of research on volunteerism and what motivates people to volunteer, it could be value based. It's like, my self-worth or the value, my individual value sets kind of just drives me to volunteerism. But recognition, there's a lot of people that volunteer so they can be recognized. And it's totally true. I mean, when you're volunteering for something, if you can get recognized, you love it. So there's that social interaction. So really just getting to engage and meet with others. There's also reciprocity, reactivity, and one of the documents I'm sitting to actually talks about each one of these bullets. But anyways, self-esteem just makes me feel better. That's so is social. It's slightly different than the social interaction, but social, just like the social worth that you're creating. Career development, I'm learning different skills that can help me pursue different careers or help me in my career. And that understanding is more of a development of sympathy, um, or empathy towards others, and really having a greater understanding of what's happening within the world or within your community. And then protected, to help make me feel a little bit more protected, because everything in the world is a little bit chaotic. So again, nothing on this list says because we want to learn how to garden. But why do people volunteer and volunteerism? And we need to think about this. Doing when we're running and managing our community gardens that check these different boxes, or check some of these. You don't have to hit all of them, of course. But when we start to think about those goals earlier, when we're thinking about the purpose, this is where we can create some goals that we're thinking is like, we want to create social interaction, or you can create those goals that support social interaction or self-esteem. But everybody volunteers for completely different reasons. But when you are aware of this, it makes it very, very valuable, because people aren't going to come garden just to garden. You have to give them a reason to be there. Give them some excitement. Give them a way that be like, I want to be part of that. That's what you want them to say, is I want to be part of that. Like, I love our Master Gardener volunteers. And same thing, if I go talk to them and I say, why are you part of the Master Gardener volunteer program? They like a lot of them is like, we love educating others. They like gardening. That's really cool. But they can go garden themselves. They can go to other locations, other volunteering groups. But a lot of it is like, that interaction, that social interaction, I get to educate others, I get to help my community. It's really altruistic based. So the reason that they're part of the, necessarily gardening, they like learning about more about gardening because they're just curious individuals. But that variables or motivators that lead us to volunteer is a major component of it. Self-growth, that's a wonderful other example. Yeah, it's like, I just want to make myself better. I want to learn something. Yeah. So this is, sorry, let me get back on track. So this is one of, I think, the most important part of any community garden. You can't build it and they will come. You have to have a reason to bring people there. One of our biggest failures in community gardens is that people build them, but then nobody comes because nobody has a reason to. Give them a reason. Give them a reason that they want to be there. Give them something that they care about. And that's going to increase your usership and your outreach and your participation and help you achieve that purpose and growth. You know, like one person mentioned, it's like, yeah, we have a lot of people within our church that's participating, but how do we bring people from the community in? It could be something like, all right, who are some of those missing links? Who are those community members that you can really bring in? What really will attract them to come in and to that garden in the first place? What is that barrier? What is that motivator that can bring them in? And it could be slow. It will be slow. It's not something that's going to be happening overnight. But if once you kind of figure out that niche, invite them, go knock on doors, say, hey, we have our garden and we're out here hanging out, talking, gardening, growing food. And then afterwards, we have A, B, and C that we're all going to eat and hang out. That's a great way. It's like, yeah, we're gardening and we're doing something cool, but we're also having this community activity that's built around it. But it's going to be slow and it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. But if you are persistent and you those goals, you will have a successful community garden. So the next thing I want to talk about is like some of the local resources that we have available here in Alachua County. And again, feel free to reach out to your local county extension office if if obviously you're not in Alachua County, but reach out to your local county extension office to see what kind of resources are easily available to you. And there's also like state resources and also federal resources that you can reach out to help with planning community gardens. Like even the Environmental Protection Agency and Smart Growth, local foods, local places, part of the EPA, they have so many great guiding documents on gardens and community gardens and food access that is great for community developers and planners, but also individual homeowners and community garden leaders. But anyways, here's some of our local resources that we have specifically. So you always have the county extension office, Alachua County Extension Office, or your county extension office. But we also have some really good municipal or county resources. The City of Gainesville has the Community Gardens program and an edible grove program that they're starting. So the community garden program is actually community gardens that we already have throughout the City of Gainesville. And they're ran through the Parks and Rec department with the City of Gainesville. And what you can do is you can actually find those gardens and you can start volunteering in them if you would like, or some of those gardens even need leadership in them. So if you're interested in like finding a place to kind of do my own community garden is tough, but there are some places where we have community gardens that already exist that are missing that leadership. And a lot of it's because like one person was maintaining the whole thing for a while and then they disappeared, and then all of a sudden it kind of starts to fizzle out. So we have a bunch of resources available, this link to you, so you can actually go to the website and see. And the City of Gainesville, like on their community gardens, they provide the water. They won't necessarily have irrigation set up, so it's responsible for the garden. But you have to bring in your own materials. But it's a great way to kind of like get your foot in the door and start doing some stuff around your neighborhood and get conversations going if you don't have a space readily available for you. The Edible Grove program is growing. Pun intended. And what it is just the City of Gainesville is growing some edible fruits and trees. around in different parts of the town. And I know that there's going to be volunteers that can help manage and maintain those. But there's also local nonprofits. They can be a great way to like reach out, get your foot in the door, help them do some volunteering. Obviously, like the Master Gardener Volunteer Program, it's application based. That's a great way to get your foot in the door and helping do community garden leadership, education, and outreach. But some of our other, just to name a few, local gardens, and I know that's like if you wanted to go volunteer tomorrow, I bet you can give them a call and they'll say, hey, we'll see you on this date. Like a Grow Hub, Working Food, Brave Harvest. Those are three, like when I was putting together the slide, those are the first three I thought of. But those are great organizations that they do have gardens and they're always looking for volunteers and love volunteers. Um, but all faith-based organizations are wonderful assets. Some of our most successful community gardens have in town have been associated with a nonprofit organization, some big entity, larger entity like the county extension office, a nonprofit, or even a faith-based organization, because that having that big overarching is really, really nice, rather than being, just purely uh, garden. But looking for schools or what are those communities that really want to help out. So these are some of the resources, but the county extension office and the city of Gainesville are going to have those like one-stop shops. Just give us a holler and we can help get you tied in and linked in to how to start your communities. So there are potential funding resources, funding sources available. So Alachua County Extension Office, we do it. We have a certain money set aside that we can help with community gardens and starting community gardens. So we do it case by case. We don't approve all requests that we get, but we do have certain community gardens that we will support financially where we can help get materials and supplies for them. So but also the city of Gainesville, because they have those the community gardens and parks that you can create through them or start with them or take over some of their existing ones. They do have some, like, not necessarily direct funding but secondary funding where they will make sure that there's fencing up, they will make sure that there's water available, so they, things like that. And you can actually request materials and supplies through them, like we need mulch. They're not going to bring you the seeds or anything like that or tools, but making sure that that basic infrastructure is up to snuff, they usually really, really help out with. But anyways, so those are some of our local resources that are available to you all. Um, and let's see, I think that, yeah, I don't have my essential question slide back up. I usually end with my essential question slide again. But so after we've gone through the program today, you should be able to say, what are those essential elements? That's the purpose, the people, the location, and equipment, and then understanding, like, really what is a community garden, what's the essential component of a community garden, and that is that building community and thinking about why do people want to come. It's the don't use the if we build it they will come mentality. You have to give people a reason, give them something that they care about. um, and then lastly, you should be able to be a little bit more aware of some of the resources that you have available to you to help make sure that your community garden can get on the right foot. Education, support, you name it. We're here to help you all because community gardens is not a competitive business, it's a community business where if we're all learning and we're all advancing and we're doing something good to help our community, that's all we want. So we want that success. So feel free, we now have the opportunity to ask any questions that you may have, because we're creeping right up at 5 o'clock. But we looked at everything from that 30,000 foot view today. And there might be very specifics that you want to ask us. So feel free to reach out to me. You can also reach out to our Master Gardener Volunteer Help Desk. And I don't have the email on here. I just put it in the chat box, so you should be able to see that. That's the email that you can send questions to. But I do have to admit, that I am leaving this position in Alachua County at the end of this month. I'm moving to Nassau County to be the horticulture agent and the county extension director there. But nonetheless, a lot of these same conditions apply regardless of who that agent is located in Alachua County. You know, the Master Gardener Volunteer Program in Alachua County really helps support a lot of community gardens and demonstration gardens. So whether it's me or whomever the next agent is in this position, that they are here to help out. And a lot of our community partners with the City of Gainesville really support IFAS Extension and the community garden programs. We all work together on this. So it's an easy way to, you reach out to one of us, you end up reaching out to all of us in one way or another. So so yeah, you're in Nassau County. I'll see you soon. And I'm gonna stop share because I need to get that link that I have there in the PowerPoint, because I always forget to save it somewhere and I'm fumbling around trying to find it. And that link that I put into the chat box right now, and again, I'll follow up with that. That's a survey. So that survey is that is kind of like what we do for all of our programs. And what it does is it allows us to make sure that we are being effective with our education or outreach programs. So essentially that survey is a way for us to make sure that we are meeting our goals and objectives to achieve our purpose. So that's why we do this, is like, are we being successful? What can we do to advance and make these programs better? And this is my first time ever giving this specific presentation. So I'd really like to see feedbacks like, what's missing? What did I miss to make sure that next time I get it, I'm giving that appropriate information that helps answer the questions you all may have. So feel free to fill that survey and I'll help answer questions that you all have. But thank you all so much for joining us today, nonetheless. Oh, thank you. Oh, how do you keep deer out? That's a very good question. So deer, it really depends on how hungry they are. If there are a lot of deer about, you know, deer fencing is going to have to be a must. There are motion sensor sprinklers that deer come in at night, your sprinklers kick on and it'll spray them, which is kind of funny. It's also funny if you convince one of your friends to go in front of the motion sensor sprinkler, but so deer fencing, those motion sensor sprinklers. You can also do what we call a trap crop. So you want to make the good plants, the good inaccessible, and like somewhere else you can put the same type of plants and crops that you're not really managing, just put them over there and let them grow and just do as they do. And that becomes more enticing to the deer because it's easier for them to get to, so that sends them over there. And that can be a semi-effective strategy. A lot of our ag producers with deer and like insect pests, they have trap crops set up. It's like they go over there to keep all of this safe. So what type of food? Anything that a deer likes. So pretty much everything. So it really depends. If they are really liking what you're growing, you could put that stuff over there. You know, hibiscus is a great ornamental plant and deer love them. So just go plant some hibiscus somewhere and then they'll just come along and munch on the leaves, and hopefully that ends up attracting them. So yeah, because like hibiscus, if you don't keep that protected, gone. So and I saw one of our oh yeah, so we had our plant sale this year. down at Cuskawilla, which is the new county camp, just outside of Micanopy. It used to be the YMCA camp, and there are deer everywhere out there. Like the most anxiety that we had in preparation for the plant sale is the deer, because even at the old county extension office up by the airport, deer were problematic out there, and we come in and plants would be obviously munched on by deer. So we're like, now we're just like, we're at this camp and there's deer everywhere, so we were so concerned. But a little deer fence, and just they had plenty of other food sources available, so it was just enough to kind of deter them, to keep them out. Of course, like our district county extension, or sorry, our district extension director, Dr. Eric Simone, was out at Cuskawilla looking at our deer fencing, and he goes, you know what deer do when they look at a fence like this? They laugh. But it worked. I told him it worked out great. So, but deer can be a nuisance, and there are plenty of nuisance animals that you can get in your garden. Oh, you're very welcome. I'm really eager to see y'all's garden grow, because that's, I think, one of the newest gardens, community gardens. It is the newest community garden that I know of here in Alachua County. So I'm really excited, because I think you all have such a wonderful framework set up to be successful. I usually keep things anonymous on here. Do you mind if I mention who you are and what your community card? Okay, cool. So Hannah O'Malley, she is with we're calling it you'll have to help me out because I don't have my notes in front of you. That's the Bridge Community Garden. It's over in Lincoln Estates. Yeah, the Bridge. It's in Lincoln Estates, and it is on the backside of a church. What is the name of the church? Gainesville Vineyard. Yeah. So that's a new garden. An Eagle Scout came in and built a bunch of raised beds. And Hannah, she's kind of lead that community garden. And one of the neat things about it is the church there does food giveaways, I believe. And this is kind of like a neat little way to kind of tie in food accessibility and teaching skills-based gardening and building community around that. So that's kind of a neat one. And that's in Lincoln Estates, behind Gainesville Vineyard, the Bridge. Thank you. I always like to keep the chat box stuff anonymous, but I figured I'd ask because it's a neat share. So the plant sale at Cusquilla, or Tuscawilla, it's also, I have learned it's actually technically, it's named Cuscawilla with a C by Alachua County, but Tuscawilla with a T is also appropriate. But anyways, so that's always the second or third Saturday in May. So we had our last one on May 15th. So it's the third Saturday in May is when we have them. So during COVID, 2 years ago, 2020, we were unable to have one, so we lost a year. So it was really nice to have that plant sale this past May. We were concerned there's going to be a very low turnout, but it was not. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I really appreciate you taking the time and or taking the time to come join us. And I would love to hear your successes about playing your community garden, because community gardens can have such a major impact on the community in such a beneficial, good, wonderful way. And I love to hear those success stories. And like I mentioned, it can be hard, it can be tough, but with perseverance and a good leadership team and just working on building that community, you'll find that it's worth every second that an ounce of energy that you put into it. So thank you all. And thank you all. I have one more class next week, but I know a lot of you have joined me a lot in this past year and a half. So thank you all for hanging out with me in these webinars, and keep engaged and plugged in with Alachua County Extension or your county extension office. Extension is a wonderful tool for you all, or resource for you all. Anyways, you all take care and have a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday evening.